Severe confidence is crucial to being a great communicator, but even as professional television presenters, we felt the nerves.
On today's episode, we have Louisa Preston, a recognisable face on British TV for nearly 20 years. By the age of just 22, she was the youngest national newsreader in the country, and she's since fronted coverage for major events like the Royal Wedding and the 2012 Olympics. Now, through Composure Media, Louisa channels that broadcasting experience into helping CEOs and teams become confident communicators. Trust me, you won't want to miss this episode.
We got the butterflies in the tummy, we got the sweaty palms, but that is actually okay because that's the natural response, that adrenaline push in the body, in those high stakes moments. It actually lifts your performance. But it's what other people are seeing. We had to look calm and composed and in control. That was our jobs. People needed to have confidence in us.
Welcome, Louisa.
Thank you very much, Sophia. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Normally, you would get the two Louisas, myself and Louisa Baldini, but unfortunately, she's had to fly back to the UK for a family matter, so you've just got me.
It's amazing to have you. Thank you so much. So, Louisa, you spent 20 years working in television news as a journalist. What lessons did you learn that are crucial for women in business?
Lots of lessons, Sophia. But I think one of the most crucial ones was that idea of communicating with impact. As a television journalist, you normally only got about 90 seconds to actually communicate your message, tell your story. And if you can do that in business, you become renowned as a great communicator. So making sure that you land those messages with impact and really connect with your audiences, which we were doing day in, day out. Absolutely. The other really important tip, which I take from my years as a news anchor, is that idea of actually practicing out loud. As a television news anchor in the UK, in the London newsroom, I would read every single script out loud in the newsroom before I even walked into the studio. And actually so many people in business practice in their heads. They do practice before those high stakes moments, before an important pitch or presentation. But some of them don't practice out loud. And actually that really makes me think, goodness gracious, you're missing a trick there. Because if you do practice out loud, you've heard yourself, you know what you're going to sound like, and then you can recreate it in the room. Absolutely.
That's a very good point, because I don't think I know anyone in business that practices out loud. I don't personally either. And obviously I host the podcast and many other workshops and things that I never practice out loud. So that's a very, very good point there.
And if you can take it one step further and actually record yourself when you're practicing, and we can do that, can't we? We can all do that with our phones or, virtual platforms. Actually film yourself doing your pitch or presentation, and that will really help with speed of delivery. So many of us in business, we speak too quickly. And actually, if you are speaking too quickly, the audience isn't going to engage and grab every vital bit of information that you're trying to communicate. And somebody can sit opposite and say, can you slow down, please? Can you slow down, if they're giving you a bit of advice before you do that high stakes moment. But you have to see it yourself. Absolutely. So my other tip would be record yourself, watch yourself back. None of us like watching ourselves back, do we?
No.
But it's
the
great.
Worst thing.
It really is. But from a learning perspective, it's really important. And during our training, we sometimes take the camera in and we will film people. And they're like, no, you're not going to film us. Wow. But so important from a learning perspective.
Amazing, thank you. So Louisa, you talk about a less is more mindset and why it matters so much when communicating in business. What do you mean by that?
Oh, Sophia, the curse of expertise. So many people in business, of course, they're experts in their field, but there's a tendency that you want to give your audience all that knowledge, all that information that you have. We all do it, don't we? There's that, you want to please your audience by giving them as much as you can. But if you do that, you risk bamboozling your audience. If you think about it, you know what you want to say. You're probably talking about it day in, day out. But the audience is hearing it for the first time. So you've really got to think about structuring your content for success, keeping it simple, less is more, that less is more mindset. Because the audience won't be able to grab those important messages that you really need to land. Louisa and I talk a lot about the core message. If the audience are only going to take one message away from your pitch or presentation or any communication, It's got to be your core message, that one thing that you want to land. And then we talk about 3 key points and the rule of 3. So we go into all of that during our training.
Well, that makes sense.
Yes, and think about it a little bit like distillation. The vital to have versus the nice to have. The vital to have has got to be in that pitch or presentation versus the nice to have. Hold that back, keep it up your sleeve for the Q&A.
Yes.
You know, you don't want to put it all in there from the very beginning.
That's a good point, because sometimes we want to just put it all out there and hope not, try not to miss any points, but actually just get the main points out.
And if the audience can't digest it and take it on board, they will switch off.
Absolutely true. So we all know that confidence is key to being a great communicator, and I know myself, I struggled with confidence, especially in my early career days, and therefore my communication was also affected by that. So as my confidence levels increased and as my career progressed, I think my communication skills got better as well, purely just as a byproduct of that confidence. But what's your take on that, Louisa?
You know, it's really interesting, Sophia. All of us suffer with confidence issues, men, women, whatever gender. Even as professional TV presenters, we felt the nerves. Of course we did.
Yeah.
We had the butterflies in the tummy. We had the sweaty palms. It's normal. It's that adrenaline push that you get in those high stakes moments, which actually lift your performance. But of course, on the outside, people didn't know what we were feeling on the inside. And what's so important, and what we talk about in our workshops and our training, is if you know that you've got great structure of content, if you thought about your executive presence, if you know that you've got a great pace of delivery, all of those tips and techniques and strategies will help you feel more confident in the moment. Severe confidence is crucial to being a great communicator. But even as professional television presenters, we felt the nerves. We got the butterflies in the tummy. We got the sweaty palms. But that is actually okay, because that's the natural response, that adrenaline push in the body in those high stakes moments. It actually lifts your performance. But it's what other people are seeing. We had to look calm and composed and in control. That was our jobs. People needed to have confidence in us. But knowing that we had great structure of content, knowing that we had good executive presence, knowing that our speed of delivery was right, helped us in those moments to give us the confidence that we needed to perform at the level that we were performing at. But of course, as television journalists, you were constantly pushed way out of your comfort zone. I remember a situation where I was sent to the red carpet in Leicester Square, and I was told, right, you're going to be interviewing Richard Gere. Richard Gere, the Hollywood superstar. Wow. I remember watching him as a child in Pretty Woman, you know. And my editor said, Louisa, get yourself down to Leicester Square. You're going to be interviewing Richard Gere live on our 6:00 news programme in London. And I was thinking, goodness gracious, I was really feeling the nerves. In any case, we're about to go on air and I'm standing there and the editor comes through my earpiece and says, right, Louisa, we're going on air. And I'm like, well, we can't go on air. I haven't got Richard Gere yet. And they said, well, no, we're going on air. We're going on air. You've got to just fill the time. So I was standing in front of the camera talking about this movie, and suddenly I just felt a tap on my shoulder. And it was Richard Gere. He'd literally approached from behind, tapped my shoulder, but then I had some notes. I had a little notebook in front of me. He grabbed my notebook and live on air started reading my notes. No. Now, how do you manage that situation? I could feel those butterflies in my tummy, you know. But I had to remain calm and composed, and I had to go with it. And it was really funny because instinctively there were a lot of journalists trying to call for his attention, but I was live on television. So I just put my arm around him just to hold him there so he wasn't getting distracted. And then he put his arm around me, and my editor and my, great television, Louisa, this is wonderful. So, the key, stay calm and composed, and in the moment you'll deliver.
That's amazing. What a story as well. But I can say, viewing yourself and, you know, on television, you could never tell that you were, you know, at all feeling nervous or anything like that. But I think that's part of what you do, and that's why you're so good at it. And others, like myself, you could probably tell at certain times when I'm feeling nervous or whatever, but then, you guys do it so well. It's amazing.
Well, that's very
absolutely
kind
amazing.
of you to say, Sophia. I think, I spoke about speed of delivery. I think that is the one thing
Yeah.
that transforms you overnight. If you can slow down
Yes.
as a presenter, and you can use pauses really effectively. Some of us will think, oh, I'm not going to pause. But you really need to pause in your communication. When you land that core message, that key message, just pause. Be confident enough to not be afraid of the silence. Slightly different when you're working virtually, of course. If you pause, suddenly everyone thinks, oh, the screen's frozen. But face to face, that pause is absolutely crucial. And if you look at any of the great orators in the world, their speed of delivery and the use of the pause is what makes them so great. And there are a couple of tips that I can give you just on that to help people when they think about speed of delivery.
Great.
When you are practicing, clap at the end of each sentence. So you're practicing at home, ideally filming yourself, and you will deliver the beginning of your pitch or presentation. And at the end of each sentence, just tap the table twice. I'm going to illustrate it by clapping my hands.
Okay.
So, for example, today is Tuesday and I'm talking to Sophia. Tomorrow is Wednesday and I've got 2 workshops to deliver. The next day is Thursday and I'll be flying back to the UK. Just tapping on the table or clapping your hands when you're rehearsing at the end of each sentence, there will be an inbuilt pause there. And then when you come to deliver that in the moment, it will slow you down and be more measured. So you can gain gravitas straight away.
Fantastic tips. So coming back to confidence, even massive stars like Beyoncé had suffered with her confidence.
Yes, some of your viewers will know that Beyoncé created an alter ego called Sasha Fierce at the beginning of her career because she didn't feel she had the confidence to go on stage and perform in front of those massive audiences, thousands of people. So she created Sasha Fierce and she went into Sasha Fierce, not Beyoncé, she was Sasha Fierce on stage. And I can really relate to that actually. As a television presenter, every time I crossed the threshold into the TV studio, I wasn't Louisa at home with my 2 daughters cooking their food. I was Louisa Preston, the news anchor that was going to hold together a half-hour programme. So how do you relate that to being in business? Of course, we're not talking about being pop stars or we're not talking about being television presenters, but it's that idea of putting that hat on, that alter ego hat. If it makes you feel more confident in the moment, use it. Absolutely. Gives you confidence in that moment to deliver in that high stakes moment. Then it's a good thing. Beyoncé doesn't use Sasha Fierce anymore. She's spoken about it. She doesn't need Sasha Fierce. But it's a great example, isn't it, of how we all suffer with confidence and how we overcome it.
So you've been running Composure Media for the last 9 years now with the other Louisa. How was the transition from journalism to becoming businesswomen?
Ooh, it's difficult in the sense of it's not that easy to hang up your microphone after you've done it for as long as we did, and especially a career at the BBC. But actually, we're loving it. We love being our own bosses. And of course, we travel the world doing what we do. And coming to Dubai, it's always a great pleasure. And meeting people like you, Sophia. The reason why we started Composure Media was because we kept hearing from so many women in business actually saying they didn't feel they had the confidence to get their voice heard. Now, when we say that, we're always very careful. We are not saying that women aren't confident. Of course we're not. The women that we work with, they've got to the level they've got to because they are confident. But what surprised us was that idea of they don't feel confident getting their voice heard in certain situations.
So what strategies would you recommend for women to balance being assertive without being perceived as abrasive?
Yeah, great question, Sophia, and something we're asked a lot about. We work with a lot of women in banking, and we hear from those women that they say, we get spoken over in meetings. How do we deal with that situation? It feels uncomfortable and it's annoying. We would always say, remain calm and composed, but be assertive. So as you're making your point, if somebody does interrupt, be very calm, composed and polite. I'm really interested to hear what you've got to say, but could I just finish my point first? Another really useful tip that we hear is the person chairing the meeting speak to them beforehand. And if you know that you're going to get interrupted by somebody in the room, make sure that person appreciates that and will step in for you and say, look, can we just let Sophia finish her point? But also, executive presence and body language is so important. And it's all part of the jigsaw. So when you walk into that meeting, are you walking in with open, confident body language, giving people eye contact rather than looking at the floor? How are you sitting at the table? You deserve that seat at the table. Don't pull yourself back and close your body language down. You know, sit at the table. You are there. You're going to make a point. If you know somebody is going to interrupt you or about to interrupt them, lean in, give them eye contact. And also the other important thing is the handshake. Now, depending on protocol for where you are in this part of the world, you don't all shake hands. We appreciate that. But so many people in business haven't thought about their handshake. And you may be sitting there thinking, well, come on, Louisa, that's pretty simplistic. And yes, it is simplistic. But the handshake is the first point of contact you make with somebody that maybe you've never met before. So you as a human being are making a call on that person just from what's communicated via the handshake. True. So especially as women in business, your handshake has to be strong. It has to be firm. Yeah. It has to communicate that you are here to contribute. Absolutely. So a firm, strong handshake, not too strong. And, you know, that can be very off-putting.
Correct.
But practice that. You can't practice on yourself your own handshake. So practice with a trusted colleague. Practice with family and friends. Actually get some feedback on it. Something else we do in our workshops, you know, and in that safe environment, you can do it. But the conversations that come out of handshakes and that whole exercise is amazing.
Amazing, yeah. Amazing point there. And then finally, just how important, to finish off, our role models in business generally? What would you say?
Role models, sponsors, absolutely crucial. I'm sure you've had role models in your career as well, as I did. I remember being employed at the very beginning of my career by a senior woman who was pretty inspirational. And she's gone on to have an extremely impressive career. And I know myself, I looked up to her. But from a communication point of view, it's really important to have those role models that you think are great communicators. Now, they could be great communicators within the organisation, within the company you're working in, or with the beauty of social media, we have access to so many other public figures as well who are great communicators. There is no problem in mimicking or actually looking at how they are impactful, how they are engaging and memorable, and actually copying some of those ideas. You know, somebody isn't going to turn around to you, Sophia, and say, oh, you're sounding like Michelle Obama today. So actually learn from others who you think are doing a brilliant job, but also that idea of, when we talk about role models, you've got to see it to believe it. Yeah. And women have got to work together. We've got to be part of a team, and we've got to support other women coming up. And that's absolutely crucial.
Well, we've run out of time for this episode. I could go on, and I would love to listen to you know, so many more interesting stories as well from Louisa. But I'd like to say at this point in time, thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for giving our audience all these fantastic and invaluable tips. I'm sure they've picked up you know, so much from this episode. And thank you so much, and hopefully we might have you both on next time again soon. Thank you.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Sophia.
Thank you.